Good evening. Welcome to Monday's edition of Diamond Live. We appreciate your company. So much happening in the country. The fuel pump prices with a very minimal deduction. We'll be talking about that. But you can participate on the show and tell us what you think about the revised downward fuel pump prices. That's and many more is coming up on this edition of Diamond Live. Thank you for joining us. My name is Kamfisa.
Well, last week Friday was a big day because the finance minister presented his budget. The budget now is being pegged at 217 billion kwacha. This is in comparison to last year's budget, which was at 177, and we've seen an exponential increase in the budget. We'll continue analysing the budget, and that's the reason for why we'll be joined in by Kamfisa Member of Parliament in Kang'ombe as we break down the budget and analyse it, but also get his views over this budget. Does it address the economic problems that the country is passing through? Thank you so much again for joining us for Monday's edition of Diamond Live. My name is Andrew Mwansa. We begin the show with today in the snap.
Well, so Andrew, the pump prices revised downwards. Petrol now going at 32 kwacha 70. It was at 33 kwacha 47. Diesel was at 30 kwacha 5 ngwe, now at 28 90 ngwe. Kerosene was at 27.52 and is now at 26 kwacha 95. Jet A1 was going for 30 kwacha 53 and now at 29.57. The Energy Regulation Board says that since the last fuel review on the 31st of August, the international prices on the market, Andrew, have been going down, and obviously they also attribute it to the fluctuation of the kwacha against the United States dollar. These are very critical factors to look at when it comes to pump prices.
Obviously, I think at the start of the announcement by government that through the Energy Regulation Board that now the country is going to move towards monthly reviews of fuel at the pump. I think they've been very consistent in trying to update the country every month, but also now you can know, now a Zambian person can know how much fuel is going to cost the next month, because all they need to do is look at two factors that are the main objectives of the determinants rather of this fuel price, that is the exchange rate as well as how much it's been sold at the international market. And so if those two factors are on our side meaning that if fuel is cheaper at the international market and our exchange rate is doing so well, it means that we're going to get cheaper fuel, and this is what they're making reference to as cost reflective fuel. What is critical now, Cheswa, is that the Zambian people are now are suffering. We are amidst a severe economic drought that has impacted 84 out of 116 districts. I know for a fact that government is putting in a number of interventions to be able to ensure that they act as a cushion under this time, and listening to the fact that fuel has either maintained or has gone down is a relief for the Zambian people. And for now, we get happy that there's been a slight reduction. What the implication would be, well, it could be it could be negligible, but I think what is important is that people will not have to spend more. The amount under which the fuel has been reduced by is negligible, but I think what is important is that people will not need to spend more than what they spent in this month.
Absolutely.
We're going to be talking around issues to do with the budget, but also look at some of the key policy pronouncements in the budget. One of the key highlights in the budget is the increment of CDF from 30.1 million kwacha to 36.1 million kwacha. We're going to be discussing this and many more issues in the budget with our guest, who is Kamfisa Member of Parliament, Honorable Kang'ombe. For now, we'll take a break.
depending on who's talking.
Well, thanks so much for still staying with us. Now, last week, Finance and National Planning Minister, Honorable Kamfisa Member did present the 2025 national budget, a substantial 217 billion plan designed to address the pressing drought-induced difficulties affecting the nation. During his address, Honorable Member emphasized the necessity for innovative revenue-generating strategies to bolster the economy and improve the livelihoods of citizens grappling with these adversities. The proposed 2025 national budget represented a significant increase from the previous year's 117.9 billion, which had already been supplemented by an additional 41.9 billion aimed at mitigating the adverse impacts of the ongoing drought. The finance minister did set out some ambitious, objectives. One of the outlined objectives is to ensure that they mobilize 172.2 billion through domestic revenue, while also seeking 8.2 billion kwacha in grants from corporate and partners. The remaining 34.7 billion was to be raised through borrowing, reflecting the government's commitment to addressing fiscal challenges head-on. Tonight we continue analysing the budget, and helping us analyse the budget is Kamfisa Member of Parliament in Honourable Kang'ombe. Honourable, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us on Diamond Live tonight.
Good evening, Andrew. Good evening, Cheswa. Good evening to the people that are tuned in. I haven't been here in a long time. I think the last time I was here, we had a breakfast show discussing our challenges at Parliament. So I'm happy that I'm here today to review the national budget, and I'm sure this will be a very interactive session. From
177.8 billion,
yes.
89 billion in 2024, now to 217 billion, in this year's budget going into 2025. I'd like to start from there. Do you think this budget does reflect the needs of the people, does answer to the current pressing issues that our people are going through?
Well, before I answer that question, it will be important to remind the listeners, and I'm sure we all want to know, budget figures. Let's start with 20 years ago. Okay, I did a bit of research on the figures. What was the budget amount, say 2000? What was the budget amount 2001, 2002? Actually, I was even able to plot a graph that was able to show that the figure annually goes up. So I want to make it very clear, Andrew, that a jump from last year's figure to what we are hearing, 172 to 217, it's not the jump that will excite people, because these jumps have always been there. You factor in inflation, you factor in changes in pricing on commodities, you literally look at the whole figure. So the experts at Ministry of Finance, the first thing they do is they'll look at the current figure, and then they'll be able to say, this one, can we grow it by 10%? So these jumps have always been there, last 30 years. Do your research, Andrew. So I wanted to make it very clear that it is not the jump from 172 to 217 that should excite the people. I think as we interrogate the actual components, energy sector, mining sector, agriculture, then we need to ask ourselves, is each sector going to see the remarkable growth that we need? For instance, 2023, in the national budget that Honourable Member presented to Parliament, he was anticipating that the economy will grow by 6.6%. I think around 6%. That was last year. It only grew by 2.3%. So from an economic point of view, from a policy point of view, from the guys who understand economic matters, there's no growth happening. Now, that's from their perspective. But let's also go to the perspective of the people. The people that have to move from point A to point B, they have to pay extra on fuel, they have to pay extra for a bag of mealie meal. As I was going back to the constituency, Andrew, as you're entering Kitwe, there's a milling plant on the left side of Mlenga compound. You find people lining up for a bag of mealie meal. So those indicators, if we are going to have a very honest conversation as a country, we should actually be seated here, regardless of which political party you are coming from, saying, guys, we have these challenges, and unfortunately, the budget did not address key aspects that we need to discuss. And I'm sure as the program goes, if you allow me, I'll be able to break down sector by sector, and then we'll be able to give people the correct picture on what I think are the areas that government did not address.
Well, this budget is special in the sense that it comes amidst, the severe drought as well as, power cuts. And obviously the expectations from many stakeholders like you is that the budget is going to address issues of the energy crisis, issues of our living conditions, as the people.
Yeah.
From that point, are you satisfied with, the allocations that have gone to addressing these challenges?
Well, so let me start with sector number one, because then the outlook will look clearer. So let's start with the energy sector. So Honorable Msokotwane comes to Parliament, announces 4 projects, solar projects.
Yeah.
One in Chisamba, 100 megawatts. One in Choma, 50 megawatts. One in Kasama, I think should be 100.
Yeah.
And another in Kariba. Okay. Now, when you add those 4 projects, they are only giving you between 350 and 400 megawatts. Because solar energy is different from thermal power, it's different from hydro. Hydro, when you say 100 megawatts, Andrew, it's 100 megawatts. Solar, today the sun is not very good. Today the environmental factors are not allowing you. So 3 projects or 4 projects are announced, and then Honorable Msokotwane says Mamba is coming on board next year, which was 2025. The President was in Parliament 3 weeks ago. In the presidential speech, the President says Mamba will come on board in 2026. So Honorable Msokotwane, His Excellency the President, are giving different timelines. The Minister says 2025, His Excellency says 2026. Now, already there it tells you that those projects that were announced by the Minister, as in they will come on board next year, may not actually come on board with the correct megawatts that we need. So problem number one, we all have this crisis in inadequate supply of electricity. We've all agreed, Andrew, that we have a problem. We don't have enough power. But the solutions that our colleagues are advancing, unfortunately, are not giving the solutions that we should be able to see quickly. I asked in Parliament one day, I think that should have been 2 months ago before Parliament closed, I asked the Minister of Energy, how many megawatts are we exporting? So he had a tough time just to put the numbers together.
Yep.
I saw him reading on the phone. Probably someone gave him the figures. The figures that ZESCO announced again, and what Honorable Minister of Energy announced, as in power we were exporting, the figures were different. ZESCO said we're exporting 581 megawatts. The Minister says, no, when we add our figures, it's around 300 megawatts. The biggest problem we've had, Andrew, is that we are not getting the clarity that we need from our colleagues who are in government, because when you are clear, when you come the way I've come here today, you must have the figures with you, the correct figures, so that then people will be able to say, is this solution which government proposed inadequate or not? And if you allow me, I will be able to propose what I think should be some of the solutions we need to look at in terms of the energy sector very quickly. I think that we need...
Before we can come to the, to
the solutions. Okay.
So you're not satisfied with what the Minister
There's no solution in the budget speech for the energy sector. Well, I wanted to make it very clear.
Well, according to government, they are currently importing power from Mozambique, Namibia, South Africa, and Zimbabwe, as they are working on, these projects that you've spoken about. The one at the thermal plant in Mamba that you said that there was a mix-up in terms of when this is going to come on board. The Chisamba on 100 megawatts, the Choma on 50 megawatts, and the Kasama one, which is 100 megawatts, as well as Kariba, which is 100 megawatts. But also part of the short-term initiatives that government is doing at the moment is to be able to recall some of this power that it's exporting. Out of the the amount that government is exporting, what we are getting is that they've recorded about 250 to be able to address some of these challenges back home. But also what we must quickly note, Honourable, is that this energy crisis has come as a result of a drought that was unforeseen by all of us.
Okay. So let's start with whether we had the expertise to foresee a drought. So now a drought is an environmental outcome. It's an outcome in our environment. You expect so much rain, you don't get enough rain. So Andrew, I'll ask you a very simple question. I'll run a very simple comment. We have experts under the Department of the Meteorological Department. So we have people that are able to do what are called forecasts. So they'll predict. They'll do their analysis. They'll use the technology that is available. They'll be able to say, 2025, we forecast that so much rainfall will be expected or so much rainfall will not be expected. So now, if you go to the Ministry of Green Economy, there's a reason why the ministry exists. Because we were told, let's create a ministry that will deal with environmental issues. One of the environmental issues is obviously inadequate rainfall. So did the officers who are assigned the duties of forecasting how much rain we'll get, did they do their job? Yes, they did. Reports in the ministry are showing that they were not going to have adequate rainfall. That was already predicted. Now, if, Andrew, you predict, your experts tell you, from what we are seeing, the rainfall won't be adequate. From what we are seeing, we don't expect A, B, C, D to happen. As policymakers now, you need to ask yourself, do you export 581 megawatts? Or do you quickly take measures, because we should have been alerted? Government should have come the way I've come here today, and they should have announced that, dear residents, dear citizens, 2024, according to the reports from the experts, we won't have adequate rainfall, and this is what we are going to do as measures. Solar, LPG, liquid petroleum gas, we'll remove these taxes, we'll give incentives to people that want to trade. Those are things they should have done. So at this stage, first of all, it's important to take responsibility. If you're in government, you should be able to say, well, the figures were showing that the rainfall won't be adequate. We didn't take the measures that we are taking now. We were late in correcting this problem, but now we are correcting it. So 250 megawatts record. The deficit against what has been recorded, even if we record the 581, Andrew, we will not get the energy that we need. We will not get the required electricity that we need, even if we record all the 581 megawatts. I wanted you to be very clear, and I wanted the listeners to be very clear. The deficit is not 581. Even if we record the entire 581, we stopped exporting to Congo, we stopped exporting to Namibia, Botswana, it will still not resolve our energy crisis. Our deficit right now, and I want to be very categorical, our installed capacity is 3,800 megawatts. Now, Andrew, if we're only generating 1,200, meaning we are only at 30% generation. Now, if you are generating 30% of your power, how then do you resolve a problem which is affecting 10 provinces? Even if you record the 581, Andrew, unfortunately, that is not adequate to resolve the problem. I wanted that context to be very clear. With no malice, yes. Just the figures.
Yeah, what about the other short-term measures, like, to address this challenge? Another initiative that government has put up, is installing generators in public markets. Okay. As a way to cushion the impact that comes with the SMEs. You don't see this as work enough?
So I'll ask you, Andrew, and maybe for the benefit of the listeners again. So Kitwe, me I'm coming from Kitwe. I'm a member of Parliament in Kitwe. I was privileged to be mayor for the city of Kitwe. So now, Kitwe has got a market called Sokone Market. Kitwe has got a market called Nakadoli Market. We've got Chamboli Market. We've got Mulenga Compound. These are just 4 of the major markets that we have. There's no single generator that has been installed in Kitwe, even at Sokone Market. We are told government has procured 23 generators. Now, these 23 generators, one has been put in Chilenje, one has been put in another market in Lusaka. Now, I'm asking myself as Member of Parliament, coming from Kitwe, and I'm wondering, this must be the same complaint which the MP for Mansa Central has. Probably we have the same problem in Chipata. Are those generators, 23 generators, in a country that has got, I can't even put a count on how many markets we have. We have too many public facilities. We've got health facilities that need generators. We've got markets that need generators. But it appears the concentration is in Lusaka. It appears if we put 2-3 generators in Lusaka, I think we'll calm the storm. But for me, I think that we could have done, this is the planning, it's a planning issue I'm raising, because the crisis has happened. The people that should have made these decisions, they had the information. Everything was on their in front of them. They had the figures.
Yeah.
The rain wasn't going to be adequate, but they did not push in the resources that we needed. Those generators you are saying have to run on diesel. Diesel, there's no petrol generator that can run that high consumption market. So to answer your question, unfortunately, we seem to be scratching. We're touching all over, trying to show that the problem is being resolved. But I think from a planning point of view, this is a fundamental lesson. Zambia needs to do better moving forward. Yeah.
But also, one key component that we see in the budget is, government having an ambitious, growth in GDP. They intend to grow by 6.6%.
Yes.
In 2025. Do you see this as realistic? Owing to the fact that against the backdrop of this energy crisis that we're in, and just unresolved economic issues in our country, but also the minister did take time to mention that now the Copper Belt has opened up. Your province has opened up, with a number of economic activities happening there. Mopani is back to life. KSM is back to life. Now we're speaking the watering of Shaft 28
in Wansha.
In Wansha, and different mines that government has unlocked. Do you feel and think that these will make our economy to grow by 6.6%?
Well, so let's start with what should grow the economy, because it's not just what the minister is saying. It's not just what I'll be able to say. There are growth areas. There are areas that should be able to eventually give you 6.6% growth. Okay? Now, let's start with the contribution of SMEs to that growth, because 6.6 is what you calculate as the sum total.
Yeah.
After 1 year, we should be able to review and say, did the SMEs trade enough? Did the mining sector contribute enough? Did the agriculture sector contribute enough? And I'll start with the SMEs. We've just concluded an analysis, Andrew, where we are agreeing, and I'm sure the listeners are agreeing with me, that 23 generators cannot power all the markets, all the trading centers in Zambia. And I'm not talking about Lusaka, because even the 23 cannot power the entire Lusaka. So already problem number one is that the small and medium enterprises will not feed their growth contribution to that 6.6. Area number one. Area number two, the mining sector. So this year is 2024. Are you aware, and I'm sure this is information that our listeners would be interested to note, that we are recording the lowest copper production in 14 years. Okay? So if you did 2007, 2008, 2009, all the way up to where we are now, 14 years, Andrew, the lowest copper production has been recorded. What is that lowest copper production? We are only going to produce, actually we just recently got the figures, 680,000 metric tons. What that tells you, Andrew, is that we are not even reaching 700,000 metric tons. And what is the target for government? That in the next 10 years, or is it now 7 years, we should be able to produce 3 million tons of copper. Now, how can you hit 3 million when you can't even hit 1 million? When you can't even hit 700,000 metric tons? So growth area number two is the mining sector. We are not seeing the figures that should show us that by 2025, 6.6 will be our achieved. Lastly, due to inadequate time, agriculture. Are you aware that the deficit is 2.1 million metric tons of maize? Deficit, the maize that we don't have. Okay, now, if we don't have 2.1 million metric tons of maize, Andrew, it simply means that we have to spend...
Just repeat your point on, I want to get the figures right, on our growth output in terms of copper production.
So, copper production, we are producing 680,000 metric tons. We are not even reaching 700. So, this year, 2024, if we did the best, if all the mines ramped up, the best we can do, Andrew, is 700,000. Okay? Meaning we're not even reaching 1 million. And the minister said in 2021, when government changed, that we are going to get to 3 million by 2031. Yes, we are not yet in 2031, but Andrew, by now the numbers should start showing up. So my hope is that next year, maybe we can do 700,000. Maybe the other year we can get to 800,000. Maybe in the next...
You don't see the possibility of us getting to
a million?
A million per year with the unlocking that government has done? Because
unlocking is a term. It's a nice term to use.
Well, one of the things that President Hakainde Hichilema is very happy about, I should mention, due to lack of a better term, is the fact that now we are seeing that there's a number of exploration that has continued across the country. They pumped in money into aerial
and mapping,
and mapping across the country that will be able to show us where our minerals are. We've already done Southern Province, Western Province. FQM did their own on the Copper Belt. You don't think that this is going to be possible? But also with the new mines that are putting in money. I was at Kansanshi just a month ago with S2 project, the FQM pumping in about $2 billion dollars. But also the minister making mention of new mines such as the Mumbwa mine, the Mingomba mine, and other mines. You don't think that this will will bring into actualization our ambition as a country to produce 1 million ton per year?
Well, first of all, I want to be very clear. Christopher Kang'ombe has no problem with Zambia getting to 1 million. I would want Zambia to produce 1 million tons of copper. Actually, the experts in the ministry, the old guys that have worked, those that have retired in the mines, I've had conversations with them, and they're telling me, look, MP, we can get to 1.5 million in 10 years. Okay? Meaning we can exceed 1 million tons. And if we're able to exceed 1 million tons, it's a good thing for the country, because it means that obviously there are more people who have to get jobs. It's a good thing. So I want to be very clear. I have no problem with these targets. The target which appears unrealistic is the 3 million. Okay? Because we are done with 3 years from the projection, so we're remaining with 7 years.
7 years.
So now, in 7 years, can we hammer 3 million? The answer is no. If we got all these mines running at full capacity, we can hammer 1.5 million tons, and that will be attained in 10 years.
Not in a year.
Not in a year. That has to be cumulative, because in each year, we still have to get copper out at that tonnage.
Yeah.
Okay, so when the minister says 3 million tons, it means each year, after 10 years, 2031, we should be able to get, when we add Mopani, we add FQM, all these new mines, we should be able to hammer 3 million. Now, the experts, the realistic figures is 1.5 million. Now, that 1.5 million of copper is a 10-year output, okay? But the question here, why I'm raising these concerns, problem number one is that right now FQM, 12 hours they are importing power through ZESCO, 12 hours they are being supplied by ZESCO. Okay?
Yeah.
So 12 importation, 12 ZESCO. So from where I'm seated, I was expecting the minister, first of all, in this budget speech, to list down, if there are 10 mines in Zambia, what will Mopani produce? What will KCM produce? Because we are assuming KCM and Mopani are suddenly new mines. No. I have worked in Mopani before. I've done business as a supplier of equipment working for another international company into KCM. Even when KCM was producing at full capacity, even when Mopani was producing at full capacity, Andrew, even when FQM was producing at full capacity, we never hit 1 million tons. So let's not mislead people that with Mopani running at full capacity, with KCM running at full capacity, we'll hammer 3 million. 1.5 million by 2031 is attainable.
It's attainable.
We have a challenge of energy. I've done a proposal already as Member of Parliament for Kamfisa. My view, this is a personal view, but it's also informed by research. Why should a mine as big as First Quantum be relying on ZESCO for power? Okay? If you go to Ndola, we have a company called Dangote Cement. Now, Dangote Cement does not get electricity from ZESCO. Do you know what Dangote does? They take cement into Southern Province because they have to supply cement. On their way back, they pass through Sinazongwe.
Yeah.
They get coal, so the trucks are loaded with coal. So by the time the trucks are going back to Ndola, they are loaded with coal. What is that coal for? It feeds into the machines to produce their own electricity. Now, if Dangote is able to produce their own electricity, Andrew, my point is, and this is the proposal that I've made to Parliament as a motion, my motion is, can we change the policy? Can we ask FQM 50% of your electricity, start producing it on your own? Can we tell KCM, you need 400 megawatts, 200 megawatts, install your own machines, produce your own electricity, so that what that does, Andrew, is that these the SMEs that are struggling, the industrial producers, these guys like Trade Kings, these should be able to now rely on the grid, okay? So we are not taking away business for ZESCO. We are simply saying, ZESCO, you can't produce enough electricity. Can we sit down with the mines? We tell them at least a minimum of 50%. If you're able to do 100% of your own electricity, maybe we'll have the electricity to reach the target of 3 million in future. So I want us to answer the question in the budget. Yeah. There was no conversation in the budget by the Minister of Finance to look at those options, because these are options that should be considered.
Don't you think now that this then is going to add a cost, on the mine? I'm looking at your idea, your initiative,
yes,
that mines should begin to produce their own power. Don't you think that's very expensive and makes the mining sector unattractive? Because if you're going to ask an investor to produce their own power, when they can be buying cheaper power from ZESCO, is you creating an environment that is not enabling already? First Quantum is importing 50% of their power.
Yeah, for 12 hours.
For 12 hours, yes. From this southern, power pool, through Mozambique, and one of the managers told me that we're actually importing. Importing expensive power.
Very expensive.
This is now.
So I've brought a solution for them, and here's the solution. So every financial year, like I said, I had the privilege of working for a company called Mopani Copper Mines. So what we used to do every year, we used to prepare what is called a CAPEX. A CAPEX is capital expenditure. So you look at the lines: equipment, human resource, protective attire, food for our workers. So there's a line now under what is called bill for ZESCO in the CAPEX. There's a bill. So FQM has a budget line for electricity. Okay? So now ZESCO has told FQM, we can't give you power for 24 hours. So can you expand your CAPEX to include the cost for importation? So whether they import or they run their own machines, there's still an expense for electricity. Should they continue for the next 10 years to import power from Mozambique, it will be unsustainable. Why is it that FQM has not objected to my proposal? Why is it that NFCA mine in Chambeshi, they've not objected to my proposal? There's no single mine that has raised a red flag to say, Christopher Kang'ombe, what you are proposing is bad. Do you know why they are not objecting to my proposal to generate part of the power that they need? It's because they've looked at the numbers. If you're going to run a mine for 37 years and you have to pay Mozambique power in US dollars at a high cost, why not do the numbers, ask the accountants, ask the engineers to calculate how much they are going to spend over a period of 10 years and install your own machines? Dangote produces their own power. Go to another company called Chambeshi Copper Smelter. When the steam comes out, because it's a smelter, so the water runs out at high temperature, it runs the turbines. Electricity is produced. Chambeshi Copper Smelter produces its own electricity. So I'm seated here as a member of parliament, listening to that budget speech, and I'm asking myself, why didn't the minister announce plans or incentives to mining companies that are going to produce their own electricity to support their mining activity, so that over years, we should be able to start hitting maybe 1.5 million tons of copper. In the absence of that conversation in Parliament, I'm seated here, Andrew, and I'm telling myself, I don't think government addressed the issue of the energy sector. And therefore, it will affect that 6.6% growth.
GDP growth.
It won't happen.
Before Cheso comes in, there seems to be less appetite for this government, to borrow. Looking at the figures here, over 80%
less
of
appetite,
our budget.
but it's there.
Over 80% of this budget is going to be financed domestically.
Yeah.
That's that's about 174.2 billion that is going to come, through domestic revenue, but also grants are pegged at 8.2 billion, and then the remaining 34.7 billion, will be raised through borrowing. Aren't you happy that, well, we seem to be heading into a direction where we are financing our own budget, looking at the figures?
Well, again, where I'm seated, I don't want 10 years from now, you use this clip and say, Christopher, you said this. So I want to be as consistent as possible. Now, what do I mean by being as consistent as possible? It's a good thing to borrow less.
Yeah.
Okay? If you're able to generate your own money, if the mining sector is able to give us more income from the mining tax receipts, meaning ZRA tells all these mining companies, pay this, if we're able to get enough money locally, it's a good thing. But here's a problem that we have, Andrew. We still have government coming to Parliament, because now the law is very clear. If you want to borrow, bring an annual borrowing plan.
Yeah.
Now, I'm reading that annual borrowing plan, and I'm seeing figures where government is still borrowing. Okay? Mid-year, we are going into the year June, the minister comes to Parliament and said, MPs, you already approved an annual borrowing plan, but we need more borrowing. Okay? Now, here's what has happened, Andrew. If you go to a bank today, you need to pay, the highest interest rate is 33%, meaning you borrow money today, after 1 year, you need to have paid 33%, and these are compounded loans, meaning loan ile ifiala. The loan increases, on the principal, again, it increases. So 33% is not simple interest. So problem number one, Andrew, is that the interest rates have gone up.
Yeah.
Okay? So as government decides today that they are going to borrow, which on a lighter note, our colleagues said they will never borrow. You remember when our colleagues were in the opposition, they said, borrowing is a bad thing. PF has overborrowed.
The borrowing sustainably and
well, those are semantics. Those are terms. You can be nice with words. Concessional loan, affordable loan. You can be nice with words, but at the end of the day, the balance sheet still shows a loan, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not going to sit here and say borrowing is bad, but I will, however, be able to say, look, I think as leaders we should learn to be honest. If you form government, and you also do the borrowing that your colleagues were doing, you lose nothing by saying, well, we didn't realize that there will be a financing gap in the budget. What you've just listed, those figures you are mentioning, there's a financing gap. That financing gap has to be bridged because the social sectors need support. Roads have to be worked on. Dams have to be constructed. Government needs to pay workers. All these put together, Andrew, even the UPND is borrowing. And I think that our colleagues need to be magnanimous enough to say, well, we may have exaggerated what we are going to do in terms of borrowing. So, unfortunately, the cost of borrowing has gone up. 33%, the lowest financial institution that will give you a loan, maybe 28%. But that gives you a picture of the state of the economy. We need to deal with the high interest rates.
The picture that the minister was presenting is a picture that looks so good because it says,
yeah, it's his job to give that picture.
Hadn't we restructured our debt?
Yeah.
The entire budget would have gone into us paying back the money that we owe. He says that in the next financial year we're supposed to pay something like 270 billion kwacha with a budget of 217, and so the entire budget would have been swallowed had this government not worked around debt restructuring. Aren't we supposed to be commending them for doing this?
Well, first of all, to restructure a debt simply means you negotiate new terms of an old loan. Okay? So if an amount was due, and I'll take you back because history, a very short history is very important. Zambia in 2019, just like any other country, faced the problem of COVID-19. Economic activity reduced, few people were flying into Zambia, tourism was down, mining was affected, literally every sector was affected. This is a story which we must acknowledge, okay? Now, what did that do? What was the effect of COVID? The effect of COVID was that the economy did not grow adequately. and we defaulted on the loans, 2020. 2020 was the due date to start paying. So the Zambian government, just like many other countries that had loans, do you know what they did? They simply went to negotiate and say, well, we have no capacity to pay these loans at the moment. So for the last 4 years, Zambia has not been paying any debt, okay, because of these conversations. So if you ask me, is it a good thing that debt has been restructured? It's a good thing. But restructuring of debt doesn't mean you are no longer paying debt. And this is why, for me, sectors like mining, sectors like agriculture, these that can perform and give us the forex that we need to get them up to the right levels. We get them up to the right levels, Andrew, we will then be able to say, here is money for servicing debt, and here is money for dealing with our domestic needs. So I really have no problem with restructuring of the debt, but I think that we need to have growth areas in our economy that will allow us to sustain even these figures that have been renegotiated.
Yeah. And hence you mentioning that had we not restructured our debt, we would not even have increased, this particular budget. Though you did partially answer that, annually we've seen, increase, in the budget. But I want you to speak to the importance. Had we not restructured our debt, what kind of situation would we have found ourselves in as a country?
Well, first of all, Zambia belongs to a global community, so Zambia does not live in isolation. I don't want us to exaggerate our problems, because that is an exaggeration. The exaggeration is, if we didn't do this, oh my God, we would not have had a budget. That is not true. Zambia is a republic that belongs to a global community. So countries speak to each other. Zambia speaks to China, Zambia speaks to Russia, Zambia speaks to America, Zambia speaks to the UK. So had we not restructured our debt, what would have happened is this. We would have simply said, can the negotiations continue? Okay? The same way the last 4 years. Why isn't the minister acknowledging that at a time when Zambia had COVID, Zambia negotiated for what may be termed as a stop or a delay to repay? That is a standing agreement. There's been a standing agreement globally. It's not just Zambia. Countries like Ghana, all those that are owing, were able to sit down with the people that they owe and say, look, can we sit down and renegotiate these figures? So this is not a new conversation. So let's not exaggerate what could have happened. What could have happened is that negotiations could have continued.
Honorable, for me, it's from the way that you've explained all of this situation. You're a technocrat, you're an engineer yourself. I want to understand, considering this crisis, energy, the drought,
agriculture.
This budget, does it inspire hope in the people on the ground?
Well, so a budget is a plan, okay? So a plan of how you raise money and how you spend your money. It's not the first time that a national budget has been presented. But here is what people were expecting, okay? And I want to simplify it. People were expecting that with the challenge of inadequate rainfall, with the challenge of inadequate maize, because I stood in Parliament as MP for Kamfisa, and I asked the Minister of Agriculture, that was 2023, Honorable Minister, Honorable Mtolo, what is the policy of government on exports of maize? I asked that question deliberately because I wanted to understand what is the policy position, meaning what are the plans by government. The minister emphatically said, we will never ever stop. There's a clip that makes rounds on social media. Yes. He was responding to my question where he said, the government will never ever prevent the exportation of maize. Now, you can only export maize when you know that you have enough storage. You have enough in your yard. Your people, even if the rains were, even if you had inadequate rainfall, the people will not go hungry, okay?
But obviously say this in relation to having, I think you talked about bilateral relations of countries and
no, I think there was commercial value. The exports of maize were giving them money. Government was exporting at a cost. They were sending maize into neighboring countries and getting money. So there was a business side to that decision.
Just like ZESC cannot stop exporting power.
Yeah, that's a conversation for another day. But I think that it's the way contracts are structured. But let me not lose the point I want to make. The point I want to make is that, look, a budget, when the minister says, next week we are presenting a budget, and let me take you back very quickly. When government changed in 2021, so we went into Parliament in September, we asked the Minister of Finance in his first budget speech, we said, Minister, the things that UPND promised then in government, we're not seeing them in the budget. Do you know what the minister said and what our colleagues from the ruling party said? They simply said, look, this is a PF budget. Wait for the UPND budget. So we said, okay. When they say wait, what do they mean? They mean 2022. Now, this is the fourth budget that the UPND has announced. You've asked me a very important question. Does it address the problems? For instance, in this speech, the issue of the high cost of milling meal was not addressed. Okay? Number two, the issue of provision of energy to support SMEs. 4 projects were announced: Chisamba Solar, Choma Solar, Kariba Solar, Kasama Solar, and Mamba, 300 megawatts. You add the megawatts, simple mathematics, 100, 150, 300, it's coming to 650, 700 megawatts. Is that our deficit? Unfortunately, it's not. So I'm seated here, and I'm imagining the residents of Mulenga compound. I'm imagining the residents of Garden compound. I'm imagining the people in Kabwe Makololo compound. If they are listening to that budget and it's been translated into simple terms, okay, the question they're asking themselves is, the minister has announced figures, but how do these figures now make milling meal affordable? We have an issue to do with the cost of fuel. It's becoming normal. People are no longer complaining, but in their homes, they have to pay more for a liter of petrol, okay? They have to pay more to move between Lusaka and Kitwe. If you are a trader going to Nakonde to pick up your rice, and you have to take that rice back into Sokone market in Kitwe, you have to pay more. So the cost of doing business has gone up. So I was expecting this budget, and this is what people were asking me. Understand, if those of you who understand these numbers, what are they saying about the cost of a bag of milling meal? I'm not able to answer as Member of Parliament, because in that speech, 3 hours of a speech, issues to do with high cost of borrowing was not addressed. The solutions, the minister was touching here and there.
So for you, that doesn't inspire. But let's talk specifics. I mean, CDF,
yeah.
Obviously we do know where it's coming from. This is something that has been increased. And now we're talking 36.1 million kwacha per constituency.
Per constituency.
I mean, in 2021, when the UPND just took over office, I mean, there was a lot of talk around this won't be able to work. There's a lot of unlocking issues. Put us to speed over how CDF has been working. Now with 36.1 million kwacha, are you happy? Well, does this, given the minister's concerns about the delays in for example, project implementation,
the admin challenges.
What does this increase mean for you and the people of Kamfisa? Well,
again, I've been privileged, and I want to thank the people of Zambia for the opportunity to allow me to grow in leadership. So I started at a very low level, the position of councillor. So 2006, I was a councillor in Kitwe. I worked as councillor for 10 years, 5 years as mayor, and now I'm MP. So I know where CDF is coming from. Okay, so CDF starts with the year 1995. 1995, CDF began as a pilot fund. The MPs who were there, and I'll be very quick because I want people to understand. So the MPs who were there in 1995 went to President Chiluba and said, Your Excellency, when we go back to our constituencies, we have small things we want to resolve. A roof has been blown off, A small footbridge needs 2 bags of cement. Your Excellency, we are under pressure from our residents. We have no money. That is how the experts, the technocrats in cabinet approved the introduction of what was called Constituency Development Fund. It was almost like money you carry with an officer from government. You spend small funds. Now, fast forward to your question. CDF has existed for the last 29 years. It's a story that people need to understand to support the work of a Member of Parliament. Now, if you increase CDF from 1.6 million to the first increment was 25 million, and then you tell the MP, no, we're giving you 25 million, but if you go to your national budget, the money that we used to put in Ministry of Health, we'll lump it into CDF. Okay, so government starts moving away from doing the big things. Instead of building a hospital in Kamfisa, I have a hospital that needs to be complete in Kamfisa, Ndeke village. We've been getting 800,000 kwacha, we lump it to CDF. Another 800, we can't complete a hospital because a hospital is a hospital, it's a big thing.
How is it working out for you? What have you managed to do?
So this narration I'm giving is important. CDF has worked for me from the time I was a councillor. It has worked for me from the time I was mayor. From the time I've been MP, I've been using CDF.
And it's working.
Here's the challenge.
It's working for you right now.
It's working. But here's the challenge. The challenge is that, one, government sends instructions on how you should use the CDF. So,
but isn't that
so you have 30 million.
So
let me explain very categorically, because I want the problem to be in a full context.
Yeah.
So government gives you 30 million and they tell you, in that 30 million, 2.7 million buy an ambulance and we'll buy from Lusaka. So I'm asking myself, why can't you just remove the 2.7? Why are you announcing 30 million? Okay, why not just say CDF is 30 million minus 2.7 million because government wants to buy an ambulance. So why are you putting it in CDF and removing it? Okay, because the local people in Kamfisa, they want to decide for themselves what project we should do. So for me, and this applies to this year's increment, 36 million looks a big figure. It's a good figure. It sounds a very good figure, but already we are told this 36 million we're giving you, half of it take to this project, half of it take to this project. I have no problem with government saying what they want to say about how funds should be used, but the principle is that the local people should decide what projects they should implement. So I'm asking myself, and this is my simple challenge, why can't government, if they have things they want to do in each constituency, rural electrification, chiefs' palaces, why put it in CDF and remove it? Why not just say, MPs and the community were giving you 20 million kwacha, the 10 million as government, we've got things we want to do in each constituency. Why announce a big figure when you are giving and taking back? That for me is observation number one. Problem number two is that Kitwe has got 5 constituencies. So Nkana MP wants bill of quantities, he wants a civil engineer on the project, Kamfisa wants the same, Chimwemwe, Usakile, Kwacha. Now you have 2 quantity surveyors, you have 2 civil engineers. So the project moves a bit slow because these experts are not available when you need them. So second problem is an admin problem. Third problem under CDF. Right now we are in 2024, the month of September, right? Are you aware, and maybe our listeners may not be aware, we are yet to receive CDF for 2024. The only CDF we've received is for skills, those we have to send to college for 2024, the women that need to be empowered, and the youth that need to be empowered. That has already been dispersed.
At what point do you have the decision
but the money is for bridges?
At what point do you have the decision? At what point as MP do you have the decision to push the agenda that you would like these resources to be utilized in this area? Because the people speak through you as Member of Parliament when you come to Parliament.
Well, so the job of an MP is to hold a community meeting, make sure that the ward development committees are able to bring the project proposals. So when I go back every Friday to the constituency or every 2 weeks when I have time and there's no engagement in Parliament, my role is to ask the local people, oh, here in Ndeke village, have you submitted your project proposals? Are you aware that CDF is available? So they'll do the project proposals. I'll receive them. We take them to the CDF committee. We'll pick our priorities. So in terms of our input as local stakeholders, it is there. But you see, if the envelope is 30 million and you only have control over, say, 10 million, why can't government simply announce? And this is my point. Why can't government simply say, MP Kamfisa, MP Kawata, CDF is 30 million, but because we have no control over, you have no control over the 30 million, 10 million will hold, you have control over 20 million with the local people. That would be a frank conversation.
You mentioned something very important, that you haven't received, part of the CDF for projects.
For 2024.
For 2024.
For schools, for building health facilities, for roads, 2024 hasn't been received. Not just Kamfisa, but all the 156 constituencies.
What's the reason you've been given by the Minister of Local Government?
They don't have money yet. It's as simple as that. If they had money, a secretary to Treasury would have dispersed the money. So the money for projects, and when I'm saying projects, I mean things like grading of roads for 2024. Unfortunately, the money hasn't been received. So out of 30 million, before we talk about the 36
million.
Andrew,
So
we don't have.
How much have you received?
We've only received out of 30 million. I think the councils were given about 14 million. That went to skills, to send people for those that want to be bricklayers, electricians, those that want to be empowered. Those are under the 14 million. The remaining 15 million, which is supposed to be used for things like building 1x3 classroom blocks for 2024. That fund hasn't yet been received.
There's been also complaint around the underutilization of the CDF. From your point of view, what possibly is the reason that you've given the funds, but you're not using these funds? Because I was looking at a report of the absorption of CDF in these constituencies. Money is just stolen in these accounts. What is happening?
Well, so the money gets into.
Just hold your thought. We have a caller.
Okay.
Hello. Good evening.
The government now they'll select which projects are going to help them. Now, what you're explaining there is totally different with what the council
Mr. Musanji.
about the CDF.
Hello, Mr. Musanji.
Yes, sir.
Can you start your question once again? What's your question?
Pardon?
Project selection.
Go to your question. We didn't hear the first part of your question.
Come again, sir.
I'm saying go to your question. We didn't hear the first part of your concern.
My concern is what the honorable explaining is different with what the council explain when they go in the society over CDF. Because them they are saying the people there themselves in the community will come up with a project.
Yeah.
Thereafter, the government now they will select according to the budget which project are they going to help them. Now him is saying the government they direct the MP which project is supposed to be helped in the community, not the community themselves is supposed to choose the project. That's what he's explaining there. So now I don't know who is lying between the honorable himself and the council under the CDF. The other thing is he's talking about if it is 30,000 somewhere like that, then the government will say no. Example, let's buy an umbrella. Then they will subtract from that money the half which is going to give to the MP. My question is, with that umbrella which the government they are going to buy, is it for the same community or for different province or different district? Because if it is for the same province, meaning the same money for CDF is working, they have bought the umbrellas which are going to benefit from the same community. All right. That's all.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sanj, for coming through. Honorable.
Yeah, so very quickly, maybe he did not get me clearly. So CDF is 30 million currently. So if it is 30 million, and the procedure is that residents in Kamfisa should list their priority projects. That's the procedure. That has been the procedure for so many years. Now, what has changed under the UPND is that the Ministry of Local Government will generate a circular to all councils to say out of the 30 million for Kamfisa, deduct 2.7 million, deduct, meaning put aside 2.7 million for an ambulance, which ambulance we'll buy from Lusaka, okay? And after we buy, we'll then send it to Kamfisa, okay? Now, here's my argument. My argument is, if government has got these plans, because those are government policies, those are government decisions, why send 30 million when it will be 2.7 million less? Why not simply say, Kamfisa will give you 30 million minus 2.7, which is about 27 million. The 3 million will not even send it to you. It's not part of CDF. It's part of central government funding, and we'll buy an ambulance and we'll come and donate into the constituency. For me, that's basically what I'm trying to say, so that people don't think there's 30 million for projects, because the people will submit, unfortunately, projects which are even exceeding 30 million.
As we conclude,
that is my point.
We're about to conclude. What are people in Kamfisa telling you around the current economic conditions of our people?
And what are you what are you telling them, and how are you inspiring hope in the people of Kamfisa?
Well, first of all,
and the country as well.
First of all, I did narrate that every time I'm passing Mulenga compound, which is on the highway, you can't enter Kitwe without passing through Mulenga compound, so it's on the highway. So check on your left side, people are lining up for a bag of meal. That should have been a temporal problem. By now, this is the 10th month of the year. By the 10th month of the year, we should have resolved this problem of meal. So the residents don't need to tell me, because every time I'm in the constituency, they are complaining. MP, why should we line up for a bag of meal? Secondly, I've got SMEs just like here in Lusaka. You can't have 23 generators bought, half of them distributed to 3-4 markets in Lusaka, and you tell people we've resolved the problem of electricity in markets. What about Mulenga compound? What about the markets in Shiwangandi? What about the markets in Chisokone market? Don't they need generators? What about Nakadoli market? So for me, I think that the national budget as it was presented, it always sounds a nice document, but I think we need specific issues that can address our people, and I hope that the minister and those that are listening in have picked one or two things that I've been able to suggest.
Kamfisa lawmaker, Honorable Christopher Kang'ombe, thank you so much.
We needed more time.
We needed more time, but unfortunately time is not our best ally tonight. Thank you so much for making time to speak to the people of Kamfisa and to speak to the people of Zambia.
Thanks a lot.
Kamfisa lawmaker there, Honorable Christopher Kang'ombe, speaking to us around the budget which was presented by Minister responsible for Finance and National Planning, Dr. Tumoko Msokotwane, last week, Friday. The budget now is being pegged at 217. The question we're asking is, did this budget inspire confidence in the millions of the Zambian people that have been affected harshly by the current economic conditions? My name is Andrew Mwansa. Thank you so much for watching.
Well, we'll see you again on Friday at 21:50 on behalf of our guest. Thank you to our callers who have been calling us equally on our platform this evening. We love you. Good night.